For me, cars have always represented escapism. If I need to chill out, I will go for a drive. Cars are a universal language to me. I feel that it's something that if you're an older person or a younger person and you're into the same thing, you can have a conversation about it. You don't even have to be from the same language, you can still find something you both like. I've found that a lot over the years. Although I've pretty much owned nothing but Japanese cars for the last 20 years, I basically like anything interesting with wheels. My name's Lee Matthews, I drive a 1979 MGB GT. I was into cars at a young age. My folks had a Chevrolet Camaro for a few years, that obviously piqued my interest even more. Once I got to the age I could drive, it was the early max power era, I guess, and modified cars were becoming a lot more popular. That was back when you could buy fun stuff from the Auto Trader for under £1,000. Through that I got into Japanese cars in a big way and modifying them. That led me to my current daily driver, which is a Nissan Skyline R32. I've owned the car for about 12 years now. I don't think people really get why I went from an R32 to an MGB. They're so different, but that's kind of the point. They don't really have a lot of things in common other than the fact that they're both rear-wheel drive and they're both not particularly great on fuel. Also in the UK, we've got a great heritage of cars and motorsport, and I wanted to kind of embrace that a little bit more and get into that kind of classic scene. When this car was new, it would have probably seemed quite dated to a lot of people. The design hadn't changed much since the 60s, which oddly now is a selling point, because you're driving something that was effectively made in the late 70s, which feels a lot older. The rubber bumper model, which is the later evolution of the chrome bumper car, they spent a number of years being less popular and still a bit under the radar in terms of enthusiasts, but to me I saw that as a lot of untapped potential. We found this one, it was mechanically quite tired, it needed a clutch and a few other things doing, but the bodywork most importantly was in great condition, which is a bit of a bonus for these because they rust really badly. Initially my plans was to lose the impact bumpers, which many people do, and perhaps replicate the earlier car. The rubber bumpers grew on me pretty quickly and I've decided to stick with that kind of whole 70s aesthetic. It's very much of its time. We went with that and sort of built on it from there. The MGB is a fairly common route into classic car ownership for a lot of people. You can see why. They've made over 500,000 of them, and many of them are still about today thanks to a large network of parts suppliers and specialists. You can buy practically anything for this car still. Even if your shell is too far gone, you can buy a new shell. They're better supported than a lot of new cars. Obviously I've made some changes to the car to make it more me. The biggest area of improvement I'd say is the suspension. It was all pretty tired. The ride height is naturally quite high on the rubber bumper cars. Now it runs on lowered heritage springs with a telescopic conversion on the rear, and the fronts are lowered springs with a refurbished set of dampers coupled to a larger anti-roll bar. The wheels, they came from a Reliance Scimitar, very similar in design to the MGB V8 wheels, but they're slightly wider, and that coupled with a decent set of tyres, the car now handles something like it should. The results of that work, the car now turns in much sharper, the handling is probably more similar to what it was originally intended, and I've tried to, where possible, keep modifications in keeping and sort of period correct. I do like to push things to the point where they stand out. They're not a particularly powerful car. I think the stock engine's about 100 horsepower, but they do create an impression of speed thanks to being low. They're really noisy, there's no soundproofing whatsoever. Tend to feel like you're driving a lot faster than you are. You feel like you're going like a bat out of hell, and you look down at the speedo, you're doing 50 miles an hour, well within the speed limit, which is always good. To drive them fast, you have to be smooth. You have to treat it with a bit of mechanical sympathy, but that's kind of all part of the fun. For me, when I drive it, the car feels like a time capsule. I want it to feel like it would have felt in the late 70s. An unexpected bonus for me is now when I go to car shows, I'm the young guy with an MG as opposed to the older guy with the Skyline. Owning this car for the last couple of years, it's certainly opened up a new world to me in terms of classic car ownership. At one point I didn't see myself ever selling the Skyline. I'm already considering the next project that might sit alongside it in the garage. Cars like this are all rolling projects, restorations, whatever. So my plan is just to keep it as long as possible and keep it in good shape and get in and drive it wherever the opportunity presents itself. Taking it out feels like an event, and I'll try to do it as often as possible.